Two juveniles are among 6 suspects charged with more than 80 violent crimes. How Maryland's Attorney General is working to take down organized crime. Lawmakers in Annapolis debate juvenile crime, why they're in disagreement about what should come next. And today marks day 1 in the Kiona Holly murder trial. We'll break down testimony from more than a dozen witnesses.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
We have breaking news tonight out of New York City, where 2 men are convicted in the murder in the 2002 shooting death of Run-DMC's DJ Jam Master Jay. Ronald Washington, who was Jay's childhood friend, and Carl Jordan Jr., Jay's godson, were found guilty today. Jay, also known as Jason Mizell, was the DJ for the groundbreaking group Run-DMC. He was killed in a brazen shooting more than 20 years ago. And much like the murders of rap icons Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls, this case stayed open for years. The jury took more than 10 hours to make the deliberations. Washington and Jordan will be sentenced at a later date, and we'll keep you updated on it. Mary?
Kai, thank you. We continue to follow that major backup on 95 northbound in White Marsh. You're taking a live look at the backup right now. Lanes just starting to open up again after about 2 hours of standstill there. There is now just one northbound lane left closed. The backup has been improving, but traffic still, as you can see, moving slowly. Lots of brake lights there. We're working to learn more about the 2 vehicles involved. We'll bring you any updates as they become available. 6 suspects, including 2 juveniles, are now linked to at least 80 violent crimes across Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Attorney General Anthony Brown announcing hundreds of charges against what officials are calling a gang. Officials say they've linked the 6 suspects to dozens of violent crimes, including murder, attempted murder, and carjacking. Though almost all of those crimes were committed in Baltimore City, the case is being pursued in Baltimore County.
While we don't go into detail about the tactical or strategic reasons behind why we may bring a case in a particular venue, the enabling statute that we operate in gives us that flexibility to do that.
These individuals have done extensive damage to the city's neighborhoods and communities.
Investigators did not give details about the exact ages or involvement of the 2 juvenile suspects. One of those juveniles, though, is allegedly linked to a dozen or more of the crimes.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
I feel good with where it's landing, largely.
Juvenile crime bills are the major topic of debate in Annapolis this week, but there's a growing divide among some lawmakers about what should happen next. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost was at the State House today and explained some of the proposed changes.
The bill from top Democrats moving forward. We could see it on the floor of both chambers sometime this week. But included in this movement are some amendments, and that's where some lawmakers are growing frustrated. The printer trying to keep up with some of these changes to the bill language on the House floor Tuesday.
House Bill 814. Juvenile law reform.
The big juvenile crime bill top of mind for many lawmakers this session. After coming out of the House committee late last week with some amendments, those changes read on the floor.
Amendment number 6 requires notice by a DJS intake officer of a decision not to file a petition to be provided electronically.
In total, 14 amendments included in the House version of the bill. Some small technical tweaks, others change what crimes kids between 10 and 13 can be charged with. Lawmakers approving the changes.
The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted.
But ultimately,
Madam Speaker, I'd move to special order this bill to the appropriate time tomorrow.
everyone will have to wait until at least Wednesday before casting a vote.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
Delegate Robin Grammer, who is a member of the House committee helping craft the policy plans moving forward, says he still wants more data about juvenile crime. Right now, the Department of Juvenile Services says juvenile crime statewide is declining, but that's now what we continue to hear from prosecutors and communities dealing with the realities of the crime crisis at home. And Grammer says he tried to require data reporting from each jurisdiction in Maryland, but that effort failed.
I'd love to have more guardrails around juvenile offenders that offend multiple times, juvenile offenders that commit various crimes. I'm really bugged about the lack of accurate data.
Across the hall,
I think the structure is right.
the Senate's version continues to be tweaked too. And the Senate committee Tuesday afternoon.
So we removed motor vehicle theft out of delinquency jurisdiction. The way we handle it is we put it into this mandatory SINs petition filing for auto theft.
Expect to see some pushback on that change from lawmakers who have called for tougher penalties for kids who break the law. Senate President Bill Ferguson argues the SINs process needs to be utilized more effectively.
Right now, I think there's still a lot of concern about its potential, its lack of use and its kind of lack of impact.
The Senate committee also calling for a paper trail to be created from the time a juvenile is arrested. A report must be filed with DJS. The bill moving out of the committee with amendments, sending it to the floor potentially later this week, where even more changes could be made before a compromise is crafted and the bill moves one step closer to the governor's desk.
It's important to remember that the juvenile crime bill in both chambers are evolving. The changes and amendments that are included now might not make it to the final version. We'll keep a close eye to find out what's included and what's not as this process continues. In Annapolis, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And also in Annapolis today, Pava LaPere's mother is speaking with lawmakers as they hold hearings on bills named in her daughter's honor. The 26-year-old Baltimore tech executive was brutally murdered in the city last year. Today, lawmakers are reviewing two bills aimed at carrying on LaPere's legacy and making sure what happened to her doesn't happen again.
If we had had this law earlier, perhaps he never would have been able to take my daughter's life. And there are other victims too. So it's about time we change what the law is.
The suspect in LaPere's murder, Jason Billingsley, is a convicted rapist. He should have been in prison at the time LaPere was murdered, but he was released early after receiving credits for good behavior. The Pava LaPere Act would keep violent sex criminals from early release for good behavior, a policy lawmakers say is necessary for public safety.
We have to balance rehabilitation and redemption with the superseding weight of public safety. That's why. The crime of first-degree rape, which is the most violent of sex offenses, and for which recidivism rates have been found to have had a greater propensity to reoffend and commit future violent offenses, must be recognized, and the law must adjust to that understanding.
We will continue to follow these bills, and Keith Daniels will have an in-depth look at the Pava LaPere Act tonight on Fox 45 News at 10. Today was day one in the joint trial for the murders of Baltimore police officer Kiona Holly and Justin Johnson. The two victims were killed in separate shootings back in December of 2021. Elliot Knox, one of two suspects charged in both murders, now standing trial. And today, the jury heard opening statements and the first witnesses took the stand. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell was at the courthouse all day. She has the latest from the courtroom.
Today, the jury heard hours of testimony from nearly a dozen witnesses called to the stand by the state and viewed dozens of pieces of evidence, including footage from officers' body-worn cameras, ballistic evidence, the two guns recovered as a result of a search warrant, and Elliot Knox's interview with police. But the most emotional moment for Officer Holly's family, video footage of other officers attempting to save her life.
The ambush came from her left. That was the state's opening line to the jury. Assistant State's Attorney Kirk Bjorklund outlining his case against defendant Elliot Knox in what he described as the December 16th, 2021 executions of Baltimore police officer Kiona Holly and then civilian Justin Johnson. Bjorklund telling the jury Knox's attempts to minimize his role don't matter according to the law. And Knox is guilty of everything he's charged with. In court documents, Knox admits to being present for both murders, but claims it was his co-defendant, Trayvon Shaw, who pulled the trigger both times. Both men were charged with both murders. In opening statements, Knox's attorney argued the evidence will not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, telling the jury what my client admitted to was accessory after the fact. to hiding the weapons. He did not murder Mr. Johnson. He did not murder Officer Holly. The state then moving to witness testimony, first calling several members of the Baltimore Police Department to the stand, including Sergeant Crawford, who worked with Officer Holly and was the first to respond to her scene, Officer Taylor, who responded as a crime scene tech, Sergeant Dickens, who responded to the scene of Justin Johnson's homicide, and Sergeant Cavey, who took part in the arrest of Knox. During these testimonies, the jury viewed body-worn camera footage, foxtrot video, and images of evidence collected from both scenes, including shell casings. The most emotional testimony coming from Sergeant Crawford, who had been working with Officer Holly that shift. He recalled leaving to get gas in his cruiser and then seeing a call about a vehicle crash. The state played his body-worn camera footage showing the sergeant approach Holly's crashed cruiser and realize she had been shot. Officer Holly's family emotional, tears streaming down their faces, some having to leave the courtroom as the video showed Holly being pulled out of the cruiser. One officer is heard saying, "Keep fighting. Come on, Holly. Come on, girl. Squeeze my hand. That's it." The family quiet leaving the courthouse yesterday, saying they'll be leaning on their faith in God and the justice system.
It's been challenging. It's been challenging, but we have each other. We are a praying family, and we're finding our way through it. We know that, God doesn't make mistakes, so everything happens for a reason. And we just leave everything up to him.
I also talked with Justin Johnson's family off camera. A big question they have is why the motives in these killings. Neither the state nor the defense has hinted at a potential motive. The state is expected to continue calling witnesses to the stand tomorrow. Once complete, it will be the defense's turn. We, of course, will be in court. Reporting in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, we are tracking our next weather maker with heavy rain and storms on the way. You're taking a live look at conditions around our region where there's some light rain and clouds, which could affect your commute home. We know 95 has had a bunch of problems northbound. Rain may have contributed to something that was going on there. Chief Meteorologist Gerard Bailey has more on what we can expect. We should note, though, that we kind of buried the lead because it was 60+ degrees out there today.
Okay, bearing the good part. I agree. Wow, what a nice start here to the day. And you know what? We're going to get more of that warmer air around tomorrow. But the other thing we're going to be getting is a lot more shower and thunderstorm activity. So I'm a little concerned. I'm hoping it's not going to be as bad on the roads as we are seeing out there tonight, because the weather is going to be a lot more impactful to your commute home tomorrow. We're going to talk about that. First of all, at least the radar picture not showing as much of activity as we saw earlier today. We do have wind advisories that go into effect tomorrow here. Then that means gusty winds that will be upwards of 50 miles per hour. So we're tracking a pretty strong system to come our way. Right now, just for the next 8 hours or so, we're going to be talking about temperatures staying pretty mild, but there will be some spotty shower activity out there. We're not going to be really seeing as much of an issue tonight as we will tomorrow evening. So we're going to be tracking that. Your headlines, rain and thunderstorms, obviously. And then we're going to be seeing winds becoming gusty, and then a big temperature drop is on the way. We're going to talk more about this very potent system coming our way in just a bit.
U.S. senators investigating why American technology keeps ending up in the hands of the Russian military. I'm Atral Nashar on Capitol Hill with the American companies that may be behind it.
This week marks 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the U.S. and its allies imposed sweeping sanctions meant to undermine Russia's economy and military. Those sanctions haven't been as punishing as many thought, and a group of senators is starting to investigate why. Sinclair national correspondent Audra Elnishar joins us live from Capitol Hill. And Audra, you spoke to some of those senators today. What did they have to say?
Well, they say that they're just getting a grasp on how American semiconductors are ending up in the hands of the Russian military and how the Russians are using them to undermine American interests. The use of American technology undermining America's foreign policy. Despite export controls and sanctions, American-made semiconductors have been found in Russian weapons systems on a massive scale. The Senate Intelligence Subcommittee on Investigations now looking into how and why, focusing on a handful of the biggest American chip makers: Intel, Texas Instruments, AMD, and Analog Devices.
They're sophisticated multinational companies that have controls over processes, but when you're manufacturing in places like China, it gets pretty difficult.
Their chips potentially getting into Russia through countries not subject to restrictions, like Armenia, Finland, Georgia, Kazakhstan, and Turkey, according to a committee memo. Between January and October of last year, $351 million worth of battlefield goods from Intel were imported by Russia, according to a report by the Kyiv School of Economics. Intel tells us they comply with export regulations and sanctions, and actively and diligently works to track and mitigate potential distributor issues and has zero tolerance for circumvention of its requirements. Subcommittee Chairman Richard Blumenthal tells us they're just starting to have conversations with these companies, as well as sanction enforcement officials at the Commerce and Treasury departments. There's no time to waste in a now 2-year war. Ukraine, without renewed aid from Congress, is losing territory, retreating from the key city of Avdiivka last week. It's been 2 years. Why is this conversation just happening now?
I think that we are just becoming aware of how lethally ineffective our export controls are, how our sanctions are a sieve.
Another concern senators have is that other adversaries, North Korea, Iran, China, are watching how Russia is getting around these sanctions and creating a playbook of their own.
I think they see this as perhaps an easy path to go around export control.
Now, the other fear here, long term, Mary, is that this could undermine U.S. strategy worldwide for years to come. Mary?
It is a complex situation. Audra Elnishar reporting live for us in D.C. tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. We're tracking, of course, our system to come through the area. We had showers around to begin the evening, getting a break from them for now. Seeing just a few spotty ones out there, but oh, trust me, there's a lot more coming. We've got a pretty strong storm system out to the west. It's moving across the Midwest right now. And we're going to play a little game I like to call Find the Cold Front. This one's pretty easy. My gosh, we have about a 60 to 70 degree temperature difference between some states in the Midwest and the northern plains. Bismarck, it's down to the single digits. It's even dropped to the negatives in some places, whereas we see it around 80 degrees in places like St. Louis. All right, so that is a potent system coming our way. It's going to be strong enough to produce showers and some thunderstorms as it arrives as we move through late tomorrow. Tonight, we're still getting some sort of a prelude to it as it arrives later tomorrow, but still scattered showers will be around. We'll see that increasing activity as we move through your Wednesday. As you notice, temperatures do not get too cold tonight, mid-50s, but scattered showers will be around. We'll see that sort of in waves as we move through the day tomorrow, but I would say it's almost a guarantee tomorrow evening we're going to have some much more activity around the rush hour time than we did today. Now, rain and thunderstorms will be likely. They could be stronger, very heavy at times, and also gusty winds. Temperatures tomorrow will actually still reach around the mid to upper 60s before that system arrives. And then, boom, we crash down upper 20s to around 30 degrees for your lows, 40s for highs on Thursday. All right, let's quickly show you those winds because they're going to be gusty. Wind advisories in place for tomorrow evening. You can see why. Winds gusting nearly 50 miles per hour at times. So make sure the trash cans, everything is nailed to the ground. It will blow away, and you'll have to go track it down in the neighbor's yard, of course. All right, coming up in just a bit, we will have your 10-day forecast.
When he was lost, he couldn't tell anyone that he was lost, that he was hungry.
There are amber alerts for children and silver alerts for seniors. Now lawmakers are considering creating purple alerts for those with special needs. The story of survival that's inspiring the bill. Maryland lawmakers are considering the idea of creating what they call purple alerts to get the word out when people with special needs go missing. Brad Bell with our Sinclair sister station in Washington, D.C. has a look at the measure and the inspiration behind it.
His story dominated the news cycle and captured the attention and concern of the whole region. Last fall, 31-year-old Rashawn Williams, a nonverbal man with Down syndrome, went missing. He'd walked away from a day program in Silver Spring, got on a bus, and then was spotted in metro stations, getting on and off trains, police sharing these security videos, and then nothing. No sign of him for a full week.
I gave up that he was alive. That amount of time.
Rashawn's dad, Jimmy Hall, says it was a nightmare.
When he was lost, he couldn't tell anyone that he was lost, that he was hungry.
It turns out Rashawn was trapped in a storage room inside a metro station, a place nobody thought to look for nearly a week.
It was 6 days, going on 7, with no water, no food, no facilities, poor air quality, completely dark. It basically solitary confinement. That's where he was at.
Rashawn is okay now, although his dad says he sometimes struggles to sleep. And together, they are hoping his story helps save the next person like him who becomes lost. They are in Annapolis asking the state legislature to pass a law creating a purple alert system. The system would work like the current amber and silver alerts for abducted children and missing seniors, except for those with cognitive impairments. State Senator Arthur Ellis, who's sponsoring the legislation, says he sees no opposition to the bill.
I'm going to do my best to make it happen. I think my colleagues are very much in favor of passing this bill.
Rashawn and his family believe had there been an alert system last fall, he would have been home the first night.
If the alert was in place, he came in contact with at least 100 people that night. 10 of them would have seen the alert, and he would have been found that night.
Hall says Rashawn knows about the proposed purple alert and has a simple message for the lawmakers. He says, thank you. In Annapolis, Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
All right, 10-day forecast time. We will see some dry time, but not a whole lot here. Take a look. We've got, of course, the wind and rain that's going to happen tomorrow with the system. Thursday looks dry, but a lot colder. Our temperatures recover very quickly. We'll be hitting the 60s again by the end of the weekend. Still tracking a chance for showers late Friday and possibly into Saturday as well. We'll have to watch and see how Sunday and Monday are shaping up. It's still a very hazy picture on the weather data as to whether or not we're going to have rain or not, but we're pretty confident we'll at least have some more milder temperatures well above the average.
Well, that's all for Fox 45 News at 6. Family Feud's up next. We'll see you back here for the news at 10 tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good night.